Hey, how's it going? It's your man, Christopher the Rupel, and if you're hearing this, you're probably like, oh, wait, why is there a weird intro here? Well, before Drunken Book Club became what it is now, where we get drunk, talk about kids' books, and other such things, the original Drunken Book Club was this style and format, where I used to read, almost 5 books, 3 to 5 books in a month, and I wanted to talk about them, but I was very... shy, didn't think I was smart enough to actually talk about these books without getting drunk first and having a jovial time about it. So this is where this incarnation of Drunken Book Club is. There's about a couple handful of these episodes. I think they're fun. I did not want to get rid of them when we became Drunken Book Club, originally speaking of which. So here it is. Enjoy, and these are the new socials, DBC_pod for the Twitter account, and our new Patreon is patreon.com/drunkenbookclub. Think about supporting us. It may improve further stuff, yada yada yada. Okay, bye. Hey, it's your host, Christopher the Rupel, and it's time for Drunken Book Club, Volume 5? Maybe it's 6. I'm drunk. I don't remember. I'm not necessarily drunk yet. I'm definitely on the heady part of it, where you feel it in your head, But, wouldn't necessarily say I'm drunk. So, let's get through with my pre-game drinks and drinks in general. On this episode, I made a kind of a weird concoction because me and Joe last week did a kind of weird drunk podcast with Sam being the sober one, and we went to Total Wine and I picked up just a party pack of 99 flavors. If you know what, it's the brand 99 whatever, 99 watermelon, 99 banana, that kind of thing. And I don't have a buttload, but I have a lot of those left over. And I was like, oh, I should mix it with some other alcohol, make it a little extra powerful. And I'll just say, it's a bit of a mistake. I mixed a pineapple one with a Long Island iced tea and put a little bit of my grape Mio in there. And it's okay. Oh, it's a bit on the strong side for my taste. But that's my pre-game drink. It's less pre-game and more I had some and now I'm I'm already feeling it, so I'm like, well, time to record. And then my other drink, my backup drink, is I'm using another 99 flavor. See, 99 espresso, I think is what it's called, or espresso, because I think it actually has X's in there if I remember. I made a coffee with it, so I just mixed coffee, put a little bit of almond milk in there. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm gonna go ahead and take a sip of it now just to see how it tastes. That's pretty good. I can taste the alcohol in there, but it's not as bad as the other one. I was about to say, I might actually be sipping on this one while the other one is just getting watered down in the corner. Yeah, I even brought a whatever the I have generic Splenda. A Priva, yeah, I just got that just in case if it wasn't up to code, up to my flavor taste. But this is a pretty decent one. It tastes like coffee. That one is pretty decent. I definitely feel the effects of the alcohol now. So I was about to say, so on this it's been a while. I was about to say I didn't do one last month, right? Yeah, I don't think I did. I can't remember if I did or if I didn't. But this time around, I have a couple books here that they're pretty different. I'll tell you that much. I only read 3 this time. I'm not including, like I said on the last one, I'm not including the comic books because I don't feel I can really critique comic books well. I still haven't gotten that down to a knack. But if you really want to know what comic books I read last month, did I even read any? I've been reading some off of the DC Nation app. Like, I've been trying to understand not Identity Crisis, Infinite Crisis, and trying to get, like, all of that, like, over-encompassed into reading. But I'm having some difficulties because I'm missing some issues of certain comics part of it. We'll see if I finish Infinite Crisis or not, but I started reading that one. I really liked it. I'm starting to read Animal Man, the one by Jeff Lemire, and that one's pretty freaking good. Like, I started reading it when it first came out, and it just wasn't my thing. I think I was just a little too young and was just like, ugh, the art's ugly. Ugh, why does the kid have a mullet? Ugh. You know, stupid stuff like that. But, like, I definitely put art in the background now and mainly focus on the story. So, there's kind of my opinion on Animal Man. But to get to the actual books I'm reading. So, this is pretty much my nice way of saying spoiler alert for 3 books. All of which are pretty damn old, actually. The one that's probably the youngest got printed in the 80s, I believe. So, there's that. So, the 3 books I read were Johnny Got His Gun by Dalton Trumbo, Deviant by Harold Schechter, and The Pigman by Paul Zindel. I read this one in a hurry, but I really liked it. I'll just say up front, I really enjoyed all 3 of these books. So if you have, like, any concerns or anything of, like, oh, he's gonna spoil it or anything like that, which, I mean, I was about to say, Johnny Got His Gun came out in the 30s. Deviant came out in the 90s or 80s, I'm pretty sure. Now, let me double check real quick. 1989. Deviant came out in 1989. And The Pigman came out in 1968. So if you're worried about spoilers, well, you know what? You had from the time you were born to this point in time now to read those books. Because I'm pretty sure I don't got anybody who's older than fucking 30 listening to us. If you're older than 30, let me know. I'm actually pretty interested in knowing what you think about listening to a person who is younger than you talking to you and being like, hey, he's not bad. He can be pretty funny sometimes. I just want to know. You can contact me either by emailing me at _Rupel or sending me a message on Twitter or Instagram at _Rupel or at SOW_podcast. Shameless plugs out of the way. So the first book I read was Johnny Got His Gun. This one, I'm not going to lie, was a really hard one to get through because it's so fucking depressing. If you don't know any, and for what it's worth, I've never seen the movie. I kind of went with wanting to read this one for a couple of reasons. One, I actually wanted to start reading it on Veterans Day to be ironic and be stupid like that, but I had the wrong book. And secondly, I like anti-war message books, and because for what it's worth, I'm kind of anti-war. You know, that's just me. I'm not one of those. I kind of have a fear of being put into the battlefield and shit like that. I mean, why lie? War is worse than hell. To quote MASH, war is worse than hell because innocents are killed and innocents are tormented, not just people who deserve it, like in hell. Let's get that out of the way. I'm not a big fan of hell, or I'm not a big fan of war. Or hell, for that matter. But Johnny Got His Gun, if you don't know anything about it, a quick overview of it is it's the mind of a man who has lost all of his pretty much bodily functions. He can't do anything. He has no limbs. Like no arms, no legs. He has no mouth. He cannot speak. He has no nose. He can not smell. His eyes were blown away from... They never explain how, but it's probably from a mine or some gas attack. And he cannot hear anything. He can only sense vibrations. His only sense is of touch. And he uses this sense to kind of, eventually get used to his surroundings and start understanding what day it is and stuff like that. It's a really depressing tale of how it goes into his life and backstory on certain chapters, kind of relating to what the events are happening at the moment. But without a doubt, this is a depressing tale of one man's kind of journey into trying to know what the fuck is going on with himself. And him not finding this out until close to the end and knowing that he can't do anything about it. Like, spoiler alert right here, right now. If you've never seen the movie or want to, and if you want to read this book, I'm just going to say it up front. Read this book. If you are a person who is anti-war, read this book. If you're somebody who's like kind of lenient on that kind of stuff, read this book. It's a depressing tale that, without a doubt, exemplifies why war's just shitty. You know, it's not just the soul. It's pretty much like, you know, there's never just the bad guys who get wounded. It's our own people, and our own people barely get taken care of. And when they do get taken care of, it's like, what kind of life are they actually living? It's a situation that's depressing, without a doubt. You know, Johnny Got His Gun. It's a really sad fucking book. I broke down in tears at least more than once in this one. And it's definitely... If you're somebody who has a hard time just reading like sad things, you might want to skip it, but I think it's definitely worth every second of your time. Like, the impact it made on me to be like, we need to be thinking about not just of like land and country. We need to be thinking about everybody who's affected by the war. You know, like the people who are wounded and shit, not just our own soldiers, but even on the other side, if you think about it. It's just like, you know, some of these people aren't actually living anymore, you know, because of this fucking shit. And like, hell, I'll go downtown now and see people who are veterans and they're not living a good life. Like, I know a lot of Vietnam and Korean veterans from my theater, and a lot of them were lucky not to be maimed or scarred by that war. And I look at people from like the Gulf, I was about to say the Gulf Links, no, the Gulf War, and like they were lucky not to be kind of fucked up as some of them were, you know. There's actually a Gulf War syndrome. I would have to look more into it, but I don't remember much about it, but I know there is something like that, and it's just, whew. That's the coffee on that one, right? But without a doubt, this is a depressing tale. You know, it's, if you're not into anti-war messages, obviously don't read it. You're like, if you're pro-war, don't read this book. I'm gonna say it up front. Like, don't be stupid. You'll be, oh, this is fucking stupid. This guy got it. But at the same time, I almost want to recommend it to those kinds of people because it's got such a strong message behind it. Just going into the mind of a man who can't do anything. He can literally just, you know, it isn't until like close to the end of the book he's able to try to like literally he's banging his head up against like his pillow, trying to do a Morse code message of like SOS, SOS, and like no one seems to get it immediately. And there's like it's literally not until the second to last chapter, or even the third to last chapter, that they finally get somebody who's like, oh, this is what's up with you, dude. Whoa. Like, well, we can't tell people about you because, well, we will lose recruitment. Sorry. And it's like, holy shit. Like, it's such a depressing ending. And you know what? If you want this kind of like, if you want to know like the basic logistics of this book, listen to the Metallica song called One. They literally base it off of this and the movie. And I'm just gonna say it up front. It's a good song, and they even got the rights to the movie, so they can actually use it for the music video, which is pretty cool on them. Even though they're kind of shitty now. Sorry, Metallica, you kind of suck now. Since the 90s. 89 was the last time they were good. God, and Justice for All. That was a good album. But Johnny Got His Gun is a book that I recommend to those who are definitely people who lean towards the left, to kind of encapsulate how you feel and how the world around you kind of is, the whole war situation. I mean, it's kind of weird to even think about that. We're still in a time where war is going on, and there's still people who can end up like that, without any consciousness, almost nothing. They can be blown away, yet still be alive, and living through pretty much torment and not being able to do anything. It's a depressing story, but I strongly recommend it. I strongly recommend it to people who are even pro-war, to just be like, how can you support something when something like this could happen? And has happened. I mean, this isn't based on a true story, but this is based on events that Truman he knew a lot of veterans who were going through shit like this. And hell, even to this day, America doesn't support its fucking wounded troops that well. We'll dump them on the streets and leave them there to be fucked. It's just a sad story, Let's get into something more fun. Johnny Got His Gun, 5 out of 5. This is probably my new favorite book I've ever read. It's just that beautifully done and just depressing as shit. I've never seen the movie, so I can't compare the two. So, there we go. That's kind of what I've been trying to do. I'm trying to do something that's a little bit less about... I'm trying to do more books that aren't based off of movies or movies I haven't seen and stuff. So, the other two books I've read aren't based on movies, so hey, there we go. Or have movies based off of them. So, Deviant. You're probably thinking to yourself, Deviant? What the fuck is this? Or you know exactly what I'm talking about. Deviant is the shocking true story of Ed Gein, the original Psycho. It's kind of funny. Didn't I start this series off with reading Psycho? No, that was before I started this series. So I read Psycho last year. I read Psycho, and I personally really liked it. But at the same time, I felt it was really off from the Gein story. From what I had known, he wasn't like what he was in that book. It was kind of just based off of hearsay and stuff like that. Well, here is a book that I'm going to say it up front. If you're into serial killers and stuff, definitely check out Harry Schechter. He has a couple different books. I actually have another one on my to-read list. It's actually my brother's book. It's the one on... I don't remember who. I know I'm terrible. I'm just going to say it. My pile of books that I'm reading is about 4 feet tall, so don't get on my back of not knowing what I'm supposed to be reading. So, but Harold Schechter has written a couple different other books. He's read the A to Z of serial killers and other stuff like that. I actually own another one of his books. It's not on my bookshelf, though. Peculiar. I do not know where it is. But I think it's the A to Z of serial killers. I own that one as well. But this was the first book I've read all the way through. Because that one, I just kind of just skimmed through and was just like, oh, neat, that's cool. But this one, Harold Schechter creates a beautiful picture of what's going on. Not just in the mind... This douchebag, sorry. Just not of the mind of Ed Gein, but of the people around the county and even around himself. This is without a doubt a masterfully crafted book by someone who not just writes nonfiction, but also writes really good true crime fiction, which that might be one of the next, that might be, just a hint. February might have another one of his books, just so you know. Maybe. I mean, it's at the top of my book thing, but I might reach a little bit lower to get something else. But without a doubt, Harold Schechter, I don't know how to explain it, but he wrote this book so... I can't even describe it. I wish last time I took notes, this time I didn't take notes. Because I thought I wasn't able to, convey everything properly. But this time around, I feel like I can convey stuff. I'm thinking to myself, oh, maybe I can convey it better. I wish I had taken notes of stuff. But, you know how in Amityville Horror, he ended everything as almost kind of like a twist ending or even something that makes you want to keep reading? Harold Schechter definitely uses that trait of just here, let me read the last sentence. As it turned out, his remark would prove to be a significant understatement. Da-na-na! You know, it's a lot of like dun-dun moments in his writing, but it doesn't feel cliche like how Amityville did. This one, he only uses it kind of in certain areas to be like, you know, you want to keep reading, you know. And without a doubt, this is a really fucking good book. I strongly recommend it to people who are fans of true crime, fans of just serial killer writing, people who want to know more about the person Ed Gein was. Like, without a doubt, he put Ed Gein's life really into perspective of just how much of a schlub and how much of a loser he kind of was, of how his mother kind of held him back from being a normal person in society. How these kind of things made a monster that was Ed Gein. You know, it's almost kind of like what was it, 2 episodes ago with My Friend Dahmer, about how, you know, at some points in their lives, without a doubt, these people had problems where they could have gotten shit fixed if the right people were there. But Ed Gein's life was so fucked up by his mother, by pretty much creating this idea that women are terrible people, that they're filled with sin and everything like that, and just ruined this man's life. Because in all honesty, Ed probably would have turned out to be normal if it wasn't for his mother. Like, little Eddie Gein could have been a normal, well, as normal of a boy as he could be. I mean, he was definitely an off-putting character. Deviant just goes into the mind of Ed Gein and goes into the kind of prospect of like everything, how it affected not just him, but even where he lived, Plainfield. It was a very small town, and how his acts even affected that town, of how they were kind of like, we don't want to become the sideshow attraction and stuff like that, and how the sheriff's department had to pretty much almost went like super, like they had to pay a lot of money because there's a law in Wisconsin during that time where the people were, depending on what county you're in, you have to pay for half of the kind of when they're trying to identify stuff, God, fucking kind of like CSI, that kind of thing, where the government will pay, like the Wisconsin government will pay for half, but the county itself has to pay for the other half. And Plainfield is a very small county, or not small, but like a very limited funded county. So you kind of you get their perspective of like Eddie Gein kind of fucked them over, not just himself, but also that area. And without a doubt, I feel like Ed Gein is one of the most sympathetic serial killers out there. Like, you can definitely see where he could have been a normal person, where he wasn't a malicious killer like Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy or Charles Manson or any of those kind of people, you know, Eddie Wilkos. You know, he's not like them. He was just, he had a certain thing. He had a sexual he was a sexual deviant. That's kind of the thing. It wasn't just that he was a deviant. He was a sexual deviant. He didn't understand how to express his sexual needs or even himself sexually. And I feel like I will say this up front. Men, control your fucking dicks. Control your boners. Like, I mean, I'm guilty of being kind of terrible about that myself. Like, I mean, I'm not raping people or being like, oh, I'm pushing my dick on ya. But, you know, when it comes to me and Sam, I'll be a horn dog sometimes, and she'll be like, not now. I'd be like, argh. But, you know, I control myself, though, at the same time. You know, when she says no, I go to the other room and jack off. But, you know, Ed Gein was a very different person, you know. His mom kind of set into him that premarital sex is one of the worst, or even living with a woman is one of the worst things you could do in life. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, this woman ruined this man's life. He could have been a pretty good person, you know? And he was. I mean, a lot of people speak highly of Ed Gein before his killings and before even knowing of his gruesome acts of grave robbing and mutilating corpses. Like, Ed Gein is definitely a figure that is effed up. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I recommend Deviant if you ever want a compelling case for Ed Gein. You know, he definitely had a lot of screws loose. He definitely needed help. But coming from a small town, you can't get that kind of help in a small town. You can't go to a psychiatrist and without people being like, oh, I can't believe this guy. He's fucking going to a fucking head shrink and other stuff like that. And you know, I don't want to go too deep into it because I kind of went into it with the whole Ed Gein thing. Because you know what? I relate to Dahmer in his youth more than I do with Gein. I did not have an abusive mother like Ed Gein. But you definitely can tell the whole... You can definitely feel sorry for Ed Gein, but once he started killing, you have to go, why'd you do this, Eddie? I mean, he died in a mental institution, so... You know what? He could have killed more. He could have ended up killing more people and stuff like that. And mutilating more corpses. But he didn't. And for the most part, I feel like he did get better you know. Not exactly 100%. You know, he was still a very different individual. But Ed Gein grew to an old age. I think he lived up until his 70s? I have to double check the book. I'm going off of memory on this. 78 was when Ed Gein died. He was 78 years old, and he spent a good 20 years, like 24 years if I remember correctly, in a mental institution. And they even said that, like, he wasn't that bad compared to a lot of these people. And you know what, in all fairness, reading about him, I definitely do feel sorry for Ed. Like, he seemed like a decent person. You know, he was always helpful to his neighbors. He would always help out where needed. And, you know, he just seemed like an oddball. And you can feel sorry for Ed Gein. But at the same time, you know that you shouldn't feel sorry for him. He had a lot of problems. You know, he only has 2 confirmed kills. But he has a lot of grave robbing on his template. So he has done some pretty effed up shit. I like that I said effed up shit. Fucked up shit. Fuck, fuckity, fuck.
I'm Richard Nixon. I think you should vote for me and not this Donald Trump character. I'm not a crook.
I don't know why he turned into Boss Nass from Phantom Menace, but he did. But, you know, definitely check out Deviant. It's a definite 5 out of 5 for me, for Deviant. For people who like true crime stories. And I definitely recommend Deviant, yeah. Not for the faint of heart, though. I will say that. Because there is a lot of... He does go into detail about the house, and... Oh my god, that's definitely a...
Woohoo, freak show! I'm a freak! I'm Edward Gein, this is how I speak. I'm a little gnome man.
Actually, no. I think Ed Gein sounded more like, oh, you know, I used to speak pretty highly of them, but you know, it's pretty funny. Mary, she's no, she's not dead. She's back at the farmhouse now, you know. She's back there cooking me a meal. He was not a cannibal. So, let's get into the last book of the season, or of the episode. The Pigman by Paul Zindel. If you've never heard of this one, I don't blame you. I picked this one up because it is a book that is under the... Let me double check something real quick. So, The Pigman is one of those... It's actually one of those books that's been banned. It's one of the most banned books in libraries and classrooms across America. Why? Because it's so fucking depressing. And also shows a youth doing a lot of inappropriate things. But this is a great freaking book. If I was an English teacher in high school or even middle school, I would definitely have them read this book. Because it's hard to explain why it's so good. But the characters are they're realistic. That's what's really cool about it. Like, I'm actually, without a doubt, wanting to read more of Paul Zindel's work. Just because of how amazing his writing and prose is. his characters feel like actual teenagers, you know? Like, I hate to be the person who's like, I've got to compare, and I have to compare my young adult fiction that I read. I read a lot of R.L. Stine young adult stuff. I mean, you guys know that. I've said it before on the podcast. I read a lot of R.L. Stine. Even though I've never brought him up in Drunken Book Club, except in October. I wonder why that is. Shh. I actually have an idea of what I kind of want to do with Fear Street, but I don't know if I want to do it as a podcast or as a blog or what, but or a YouTube channel. But that's hearsay. So, but where R.L. Stine's young adult books, they feel somewhat realistic, but they feel like PG realistic, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna go over and make out with my girlfriend realistic. Paul Zindel has both his main characters. Oh, and my parents are there for me, and though I don't tell them much, but they're there for me still. Paul Zindel's characters, his teenage, let's just say it up front. Lorraine lives with only her mother taking care of her because her father and mother divorced a long time ago, and her mother kind of instills this kind of threat of like, men are disgusting pigs, don't be alone with men. And she's also kind of verbally abusive, and she does show physical abuse near the end of the book that is very realistic. It shows the life of a single mother. It can be difficult. She wants the best for her daughter, but at the same time, you need to be doing stuff for me. You can't be out there smooching boys. A very sinister mother character. And she's not there all the time. That's another thing I like. They don't go over crazy with the parents, but they do show that they are there, but they're not perfect. That's my biggie. Because then you have the other... Because, okay, there's two main characters. You have Lorraine, who is the girl character, and then you have John. So pretty much it goes between these two characters of John and Lorraine. And one chapter will be John writing, and the next chapter will be Lorraine writing. But it continues the story. It never backtracks or anything like that. It just continues the story with one of them writing versus the other one writing. And that's actually that's something I really like about this book. It's just, you don't see just one perspective. You see two perspectives, because Lorraine and John are two very different people. Lorraine is a very kind of self-conscious, but also very, intelligent woman. She's very... If I have to compare her to someone, she's almost kind of like Hermione, where she's very intelligent, but she's very self-conscious and very realistic as a woman. Like, Lorraine's really well written. I'm just going to say that. And then you have John, who is a very brash, he's a troublemaker. He's a very rabble-rouser kind of guy. And the basic plot is they meet a man named Mr. Pignotti, aka the Pigman. One, because his name is Pignotti, and two, because he also collects pig figurines, so they call him the Pigman. They pretty much crank call him and then end up building a relationship around him. And they pretty much find out a lot of depressing things. His wife had passed away many years ago. That's why he's so friendly to these two kids. It's almost kind of like you almost feel like he's gonna do something to Lorraine or John, but he never does that, because Mr. Pignotti is literally the embodiment of a good person. He's just wanting friendship. And, the events of the book, there's a lot of good things that happen, building up his relationship with these two teenagers, almost like he has two kids. But eventually it starts going down, There's pretty close to the end of the book, he has a heart, he notices that his monkey friend, they go to a zoo near Staten Island. And he feeds a baboon named Boo Boo, or is that the name of the baboon? Is it Boo Boo? I'm double checking something real quick. Bobo, that's what his name was. Bobo the baboon. He starts noticing that Bobo isn't eating anymore, because he used to go to the zoo and feed him peanuts and stuff like that. And he noticed that he wasn't eating as much, and that's kind of stems his kind of depression. But then the kids try to cheer him up by playing on their roller skates with him. And they decided to play a game of tag, and unfortunately he gets a heart attack during this event, and they have to send him to the hospital. And it's really traumatic. You're thinking he's gonna die at this moment, but no, he's doing fine. And then, it goes up a bit, and they take care of his house, and they actually find out that they both kind of like each other, Like, it's really touching that Lorraine and John, you almost kind of pine for them to be a couple, but at the same time, you don't want them to be a couple because they're both not meant for each other in certain ways. And then, like, they throw a party without thinking. John definitely is the main one who is just like, oh, we're going to throw a party. And Lorraine was, like, kind of apprehensive at first, but goes with him because you can definitely tell throughout that she's, like, going by him because she's wanting to impress him and be, a girlfriend kind of character for him. But he ends up getting back from the hospital in the middle of the party, and this just breaks his heart that he could see them ruining his house. And, like, there's another scene where another character is stealing stuff, and, like, John's trying to stop him, and then he ends up breaking stuff. And Mr. Pignotti sees all this, and it just breaks his heart. And the authorities are called, and the authorities take both John and Lorraine back to their house, and they're both strictly punished. We actually only see how Lorraine is punished by her own mother, by being slapped by her own mother and degraded, pretty much. It's pretty shocking, without a doubt. It's pretty depressing. But then, they try to reconcile their friendship with Mr. Pignotti by not trying to end it on bad terms. So they decide to take him back to the zoo and, see his favorite monkey, Bobo, the baboon. But Bobo had passed away the week before. And that was kind of the last straw. Mr. Pignotti was just broken down in tears, crying, and then he slips, falls, and he passes away. And you really go through John's mind, because it's John's chapter at that point, and he's just like saying how we were no better than anyone in this situation. We were no better than any humans, seeing how a crowd was gathering. We were all baboons just watching to see something like this. And it ends on a very sad note, but there's no buts. It's a very sad book. Like, throughout, it's showing that these characters do gain love for Mr. Pignotti, and Mr. Pignotti loves them back, as like a fatherly figure, or even a grandfather figure. And they betray his trust by using him so and so much. Even though Lorraine is like, I don't want to use him, but they end up using it, and it's just heartbreaking when you think about it, And they even realize themselves that, like, they can't be the ones. They fucked up. They fucked up this man's life. They literally feel guilty for killing him. And that's why they wrote this book, technically, to say, we fucked up real hard on this. Like, it's a toughie, The Pigman, without a doubt. Like, I'm actually tearing up, and you can probably hear it in my voice of, like, the scratchiness that's kind of getting there of, like, I'm definitely feeling sad right now. And, yeah. Paul Zindel wrote some fucking... This is just one of the best books I've read in a while. And I'm sad it was so short. Like, I almost wanted to end on a happy ending, but I knew that would have ruined the book if he had ended it on a happy ending. He didn't. He purposely made it a very sad ending. And that's why I love this book. It doesn't try to hide the fact that shit happens and bad things are going to happen no matter what. And it's going to end that way for you in a book. But you gotta always remember that there's always the light at the end of the tunnel and stuff like that. The Pigman is definitely a great fucking book, and if I was an English teacher in high school or middle school, I would definitely have kids read this one. It's a very easy one to read. It's only 150 pages long. 149 technically, I rounded up. It's just a really freaking good book. It's relatable to English, like to kids, Like, I know I'm 27, but at the same time, I can tell when a book is well written for teenagers. Like, to try to relate to them how they are. This book did the right job and did it freaking fantastic. Without a doubt. If I was a teenager... I wish I had read this one when I was in high school or middle school, because I think it would have changed my life. Like, I think I would have been like, holy shit. That was sad, but that was really freaking good. And I'm actually probably going to read the sequel soon. Like, I want to keep reading about John and Lorraine. I want to read The Pigman's Legacy and see where their lives go from there. And I also want to just read some more of Paul Zindel's books. The one that really caught my eye was Confessions of a Teenage Baboon. But, there's other ones in there that make me go, I'm interested in this. The Undertaker's gone bananas. What's going on there? But The Pigman is even if you're in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s or you're an old person, read The Pigman. It's just a really freaking good book. I'm actually astonished that they haven't made it into a movie yet. And kind of, I feel like for a movie, it could make for a really good cult classic. Without a doubt. So that's the end of Drunken Book Club. I tried to stay as positive as I could because I read 3 depressing books this time around. It wasn't on purpose. I didn't realize, I knew Johnny Got His Gun was going to be sad. I knew Deviant was going to be a very not mind-blowing, but a very cerebral story. But I definitely didn't think The Pigman was going to be as depressing as it was. But thank you for joining me this month on Drunken Book Club. If you have any books to recommend, leave a comment on SoundCloud or even, hell, I'll tell you what, if you leave a good review on iTunes, 5 stars is appreciated, and leave a book title, I'll definitely get to that book either within the month or 2-month period because, kind of depends on how I read it and stuff. I don't check the reviews too often because I don't get that many. We don't get too many. Thank you for joining us. Follow me at like this podcast on SoundCloud. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. It really helps us out. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. So check us out on any of those 4 platforms. And just leave a review on any of them, or a heart, or 5 stars, whatever you can. It helps people find us, and it really does help. We do get, for what it's worth, I know there's a lot of listeners out there listening to, me and us all together, and I just want to say thank you. It really does mean a lot. It probably, I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's just a podcaster, he doesn't really actually care about us. No, I really do. If people actually spoke with, commented or anything like that, I would definitely respond. Even in a negative way, I'd be like, thank you for taking the time for, leaving a review. We'll try to improve, if you want to keep listening. But if not, we're probably still going to do the same thing. But, it's greatly appreciated. So everyone from America to Germany to every country that listens to us, we have listeners across the world, all around the world, really. And I just want to say thank you for listening out there. It really does mean a lot. From the people in Mountain View, California, to whoever's listening in freaking Korea. That's really freaking cool to know that people all around the world are listening. And I really appreciate it. You can follow the podcast at SOW_podcast on Twitter. You can follow Speaking of Which on Facebook as well by looking up Speaking of Which podcast. Don't really post much there. Go to the Twitter one, it's better. And you can follow myself at @the_Rupel on Twitter and Instagram, like I said before. And make sure to follow everyone else on the podcast. Follow Sam at Berserker Rose on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Weiss at Berserker Rose. That's a bad joke, I know. But follow Weiss at Force Left Hander DR on Twitter, Instagram, and even his YouTube page. He posts his really funny AMVs, anime music videos, and stuff like that. And make sure to follow Juan at Voice of J-Rod on Twitter and Instagram, and JROV.com for his website, and LinkedIn. I think I'm going to end this episode by doing this. Don't want to hear you say you're a Sade.